It certainly feels that way. I think if you look at the trends we're seeing in notified claims, they're starting to drop off very quickly. And probably more importantly for us, we make changes to contracts at renewal. We've talked before about the fact that insurers as an industry can't really cover a global pandemic. And therefore you've seen contracts, terms and conditions change, and the remaining exposure that we have for this year, and especially into next year, is much smaller than it was before. So at this point, I don't expect any further material impact from COVID claims in P&C.
P&C gross written premiums up 3% on a like-for-like basis, and the life new business sales recovering in the third quarter. Both of those lines then showing good trends. Do you expect to see similar growth in Q4? What's current trading like?
Yeah, current trading is pretty good. I think these are the first optimistic signs that I think we've seen this year. We've seen the price trend on the P&C side be very strong, but growth has been quite muted because other lines like travel have been impacted. But now we start to see net growth, significant net growth in the P&C business. I think that will continue through Q4, and in fact I think you'll see even more next year. The change in the life business is great. It's been a very difficult year for life, given it's a face-to-face business. It's a product that's sold rather than bought necessarily. But Q3 being the first quarter of growth, and in fact in Latin America, which is a very important market for us, they're now back in growth in life year to date. So it looks good.
George, let me put your question around the vaccine. It might be a little bit early, but do you think there's going to be new product lines around a vaccine, whether it's insuring the vaccine themselves or whether it's providing insurance products if you've had a vaccine to cover travel insurance?
So I think, there's probably 2 or 3 points to make. So I think, obviously the vaccine and the news around it, and I think the expectation that we all have to see a bit more of this, obviously helps improve confidence. That will drive, I hope, the economic recovery, and we'll all benefit from that. I think from an insurance perspective, there are things that we can do around the travel side for the retail customer to help give them more confidence. Our cover more business is trying to do that already. And again, I think today I'd be more optimistic that we'll see a more rapid recovery as we move into 2021 than perhaps we expected. On the commercial side, so the product liability topics around pharma, the pharma insurance market had major issues back at the start of the 2000s. It has restructured itself significantly, and most of the pharma companies are of such a scale that they don't carry significant product liability coverage. So I don't think from a commercial perspective there's a huge opportunity here, but obviously the overall news is great for all of us.
George, the other thing that I think we've been very focused on as we look at companies reporting is just how they're doing geographically, because the mantra has been China's rebounded fastest, Asia generally doing better. But what's your read from your business lines and what you're getting back as to where the geographical opportunity is for early next year?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We've got different trends and different cycles in the business. So you see in the US some of that, the economic challenge that some of the lockdown measures have had and some of the pandemic topics, but it's being dominated by the price cycle. So even if we've got we had a relatively muted economic recovery, although it seems to be strengthening, you don't see that in our results because we're getting a huge price rise because of the current market conditions and the lack of other capacity in the market. In other markets like Latin America, where we're more of a mass consumer player, volumes really suffered in the first half of the year. But what we've seen is key partners like Santander or some of the big retailers down in Brazil, despite the continuing challenges, they're finding ways to trade around that. So even with some of the current challenges, we're seeing businesses recover in most of our markets really quite quickly. The single exception still is travel. So travel, we're still running at less than 10% of revenues that we saw last year. But in most other markets, it's either price or economic recovery or just the fact that people get smarter about how they get to the customer.